So in this upcoming episode, we interview comic writer Mark Russell. And how we got here was we've been reading Batman Dark Age. You should be reading it too. And Mark Russell is working on that with Mike Allred. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's a retelling of the Batman mythos.
Yeah, but in a new kind of Elseworld style. Also, though, he's the author of books like God is Disappointed in You, which is my new favorite title, and
One Star Squadron,
Superman Space Age, The Wonder Twins, Snagglepuss, The Flintstones,
Fantastic Four Life Story.
He was even responsible for bringing back Prez in the DC universe.
We have to celebrate that.
Yeah.
He agreed to chat with us. We still are amazed every time a creator says yes to sit with us. It's, in all honesty, it's my favorite part of what we're doing on this channel.
Yeah.
I love talking to creators and hearing the story on how they got to where they are, hearing who they would like to work with, hearing the stories behind the actual comic books that they're working on, how a writer and an artist interact with each other.
Yep.
Mark explains all of this in the interview we're doing right now.
Not to mention, his Kickstarter went live the day we're recording this to bring up the hardcover deluxe edition of his graphic novel Travel to Mars.
So in the show notes you can find a link to that and all of Mark's social media. Check out what he's doing. Give a couple of bucks in for the Kickstarter. It's great to see
he's a talented
creators
guy.
doing what they're doing. He really tells a different story than most writers. It's really more people focused.
Yes.
So but we're so happy to have him on.
Yeah.
Here it is. Enjoy. Today we are going to be chatting comics with Mark Russell. Thank you, Mark, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Mark, we were supposed to interview you at New York Comic Con.
That's right.
Yeah, and everything got a little bit crazy that day, as things do in such a hectic environment.
It wouldn't be New York Comic Con if it didn't.
Well, it was actually, I go every year with my two daughters. Brian came for the first time this past year. And
since 2015. I hadn't been there since 2015. And I was, even in that little period of time from 2015 to now, I can't believe how it exploded. How much more crowded, how much more there was there.
He almost died, basically what we're saying.
Yeah. The one time I've nearly died at a convention was New York Comic Con because the crowd was just so...
This year, I think coming off of COVID, I think this past year was just, it was insanity there this year. And you were there all 4 days?
Yeah.
Yeah, we went on Saturday and it was brutal for us to be there.
Now, were you there with DC or were you there just kind of on your own?
I was there tabling. I was part of Comic Sketch Arts. They represent me as a tabler. But I was there pretty much just to do my own tabling and sell my own books and do panels and stuff.
So how did it go? How was your...
I always have a great time at New York Comic Con and San Diego. I never get sick of them because a lot of, you become friends with a lot of other comic creators and this is kind of the only time you get to see them.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, I think this is mostly what the conventions represent now. It's like a chance to talk to fans face to face because writing is such a solitary exercise and you're at home, alone, wondering if anyone's ever going to read this or if they're going to care. So then when you're actually at a convention and someone comes up to you and tells you about how much they love something, it really means something. So there's that's part of the convention I really love. And then also just getting to see other creators who I've developed friendships with and only being able to see them maybe once or twice a year.
That's cool. How many conventions do you normally attend a year?
I usually do about 5 or 6.
Okay.
I notice people do way more, but I don't understand how you hit deadlines and do all the work when you're constantly traveling. Because it's, to me, it like wipes out a whole week. Even if the convention's only 3 or 4 days, the travel and then just sort of the jet lag and stuff, it'll wipe out a whole week's worth of work if I go to a convention.
And you're where? You're in Oregon, right?
Yeah, I'm Portland, Oregon. So yeah, a lot of flying for me.
We're in New York, so New York Comic Con is our,
that's your local
convention.
So, right up front, you said before we started recording, you were talking about a Kickstarter for. Just remind me again what you were saying.
We're traveling to Mars, specifically
traveling to Mars. Thank you.
The hardcover edition. We're doing a deluxe hardcover edition, which frankly I think is the best way to read it, because not only do you get this really attractive hardcover, but there's all kinds of extras in there, and it's being Kickstarted, so there's rewards and prizes, and you get the copy signed and stuff. So
Yeah.
it really, I think, is worth it for people who are interested in buying or getting the book Traveling to Mars to take a chance on the hardcover.
So if people are listening, how can they do that right now if they would like?
Just go to Kickstarter and search Traveling to Mars.
Okay, there you
Great.
go. Traveling to Mars Kickstarter.
Great. Yeah,
Very good.
I'm actually a big fan of those sort of deluxe hardcover
Me too.
storylines.
I almost always, if I'm going to get a trade and there is a deluxe hardcover available, I'll almost always get the hardcover.
Yeah, I
just because it
remember.
looks better.
Yeah, oh yeah, and I remember as a younger when I first started getting trade paperbacks, I think it was one of the trade paperbacks of the Sandman, where this was a big deal for me because I always like to know how things are made. They had reprinted the script of one of the stories in the back. I believe it was the Calliope story, and I remember reading that and like going over it like it was like some kind of crime scene evidence. Like, oh, this is comic books. Like I didn't know.
Yeah. No, there's that thing too. It's like
Yeah.
you get to see like character designs and how they evolve. Yeah, it's really sort of interesting to see how, the sausage making that goes into comics.
Yeah.
And for kids it's exciting because you get to see, well, this is how the pros do it.
Mhm.
And even for other creators exciting because you can see how other people script and work differently than you do.
Right. Yeah, you get a sense of the process and how they create things. Yeah. Now, do you have a particular process that you go to as far as writing goes?
Yeah, I almost always write a complete script.
Mhm.
But the way I do it is usually I'll almost always start out writing the beginning scene and then the end scene first,
Okay.
and then filling in the middle. I'll have a rough idea of what the plot of the issue needs to be. And I'll also have like a paragraph about this is what needs to be in this issue, and I'll write the beginning and then the ending, and then I just sort of try to have the meat in the middle. And to me, that's a more effective way to write than to just start at the beginning and just sort of work your way towards the end.
Right. And
Because
that's
you want to start and end with your strongest ideas or when you're freshest and when you're thinking the most about like how you want a reader to see this. Because that's as close as you will be to being a reader yourself. It's like when you're just starting.
right.
And then as you're working on a project and your sort of, managerial brain takes over,
Mhm.
the less sort of exciting, less creative part of your brain, then that's when you need to be thinking about like, well, how do I make these plot lines sort of fit together, or how do I make the two railroads meet in Utah somewhere?
Yeah, that's got to be difficult to do with a monthly because you've got the beginning, you've got the end, then you only have so many pages
Yeah.
and panels to work with within there. So that's got to be a sort of like a logistical challenge.
Yeah, one of the really hard things about writing an ongoing or a monthly is when they only give you 20 pages.
Mhm.
It's like telling like a satisfying story in 20 pages. Usually, especially if it's like an action based sort of like X Factor or something.
Yeah. Mhm.
You have to assume about 4 or 5 of those pages are going to be some sort of action scene.
Mhm.
So really about 15 or 16 pages
Yeah.
to tell a story, to have all the conversations. And it doesn't leave a lot of room for subplots or any sort of the sort of nuances that you normally put into storytelling. But the advantage is that if people are reading an ongoing, they're going to be around for, 2 or 3, 4, 5 issues probably after this. So it's okay to have scenes fall in the middle of your series that don't necessarily have a lot to do with the rest of the issue because they're feeding what people need to know for the long term.
Right. Right. And yeah, I guess you have to find a way to balance that too. Like what's the short-term story, what's going to be the long-term.
Yeah. And you never want to write something where it's like, okay, this is worthwhile if you're reading the whole series, but if you're just reading this one issue, you're going to be totally lost. That's not a good comic book.
Yeah.
That's not a good single issue. You want somebody, you always want to write thinking somebody walks into a comic shop and this is the first comic book they've ever read.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be able to pick it up off the shelf, understand what's going on, and love it.
That's a great way to look at it.
That's really good.
Really
Yeah. I like that.
So how did you get your start in comics? What brought you into comic books?
The first comic I ever wrote was Prez in 2015, which tells the story of the first teenage president. It was actually a reboot of a comic that ran for about 4 issues.
We know it.
We know.
You know Prez Rickard, Friends of Prez Rickard. Good.
Yes.
So that was how I got my start. And for a long time, I just thought, well, I'd written books before, so I thought DC must have seen my books, and they must have invited me to come and to ask me to write this.
So they reach out
series.
to you.
They reached out to me. I didn't pitch because I had never written a comic book before. Would have been the furthest thing from my mind to like pitch to a comic company to let me write a comic series. But it turns out it had nothing to do with the books I'd published. The reason why they contacted me was because on Facebook I've been posting these sort of silly stories about the cereal monsters, like Count Chocula and Frankenberry, as if it's like this gothic fiction, and they're all sort of stabbing each other in the back and betraying. It's basically the cereal monsters if they lived in this sort of Game of Thrones universe. and they liked that, so that was why they thought maybe this guy will write the series, because they were looking for somebody who would write kind of funny, and they didn't have a lot of funny writers at DC at the time. They never do. So
he's known to be pretty serious normally.
So it usually, I think the term back then was grimdark. They were the House of Grimdark.
Yeah.
So it was just sort of a matter of being in the right place and right time, where I happened to, write this thing that was sort of funny and not too serious, and my editor at the time, Marie Javins, just happened to see it on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. And that was that's like 10 years ago?
Yep.
So you did write something for visual, kind of visual, with a visual aspect to it. You had a book called God is Disappointed in You, which, by the way, I want that on a t-shirt. But that is that's a great title. It's a retelling of the Bible?
Yeah. Okay. So every book of the Bible condensed down to like 3 or 4 or 5 pages each. And it's got cartoons by Shannon Wheeler.
When I need to study for the Bible.
That's great.
That was the first book I ever published, and I'm still very proud of it.
Right. And you had worked with a cartoonist, was it Shannon Wheeler? New Yorker?
Yeah, Shannon Wheeler. He does cartoons for the New Yorker. He also does the Too Much Coffee Man cartoon series.
Okay.
That's where I know his name. I remember Too Much Coffee Man from the 90s.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. Which is weird because I remember reading Too Much Coffee Man when I was in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like decades later, I ended up working with this guy.
Yeah,
that's gotta be cool.
I think I still have the issue that's about where he fights copyright infringement man.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember
one of the best. This is such a great story.
I actually really enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you. No, I'm really glad you picked that up. I think you might be the only one.
Oh, maybe, but I enjoyed it because it's such a different look at being a superhero. It's more of, it was appealing to me because it's kind of like us, like they need to make money too. So it's okay to be a superhero, but everyday life still comes knocking, and you got to pay your bills. And it was very story driven. So I guess
thank you. As
I get older, I guess I appreciate that more. Like, action is great, but too much action there's no story behind it. So this had and actually it's funny because I don't remember which was first, I really enjoyed Wonder Twins, and then I think this is after Wonder Twins, right? And then this,
right?
Wonder Twins, you told sort of about being teenage,
right?
Teenage and how hard it is, and in this you told how about being an adult, how hard it is to be a superhero as an adult.
Sort of over the hill adult too, which
right.
I think is kind of what those two have in common is that so much superhero fiction is about people in their prime,
right? People
at the very top of their game.
Yeah.
Whereas most of us, for most of our lives, will either be on the way up or the way down.
Right.
And so
we're on the way down right now. So just
I feel you.
You don't recognize that peak at all, do you?
I actually believe we're all right around the same age. We're in our early 50s.
Yeah. But I definitely feel the slope getting easier.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100% do, and that's why this appeals to me, because it was one of those stories where like, this really appeals to me as an older reader, and I understand the issues that they're having as an adult.
Yeah. Well, I think that also, it's like we think of superheroes as being sort of winners, or Michael Jordan or something,
right?
But even if you want to use that metaphor, professional athletes, most professional athletes aren't making aren't signing 100 million contracts and winning NBA championships. Most of them are squeaking out a living in the G League, or like going from like tryout to tryout, trying to get on a practice squad or something. Sure. And this is the story of those kind of heroes. These are practice squad heroes.
Yeah,
or guys who end up selling insurance because they couldn't catch on professionally. And the one thing they know how to do.
That's funny because it's I just I remember reading something somewhere. It was something about Major League Baseball's history, and it really, in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been that long since baseball players used to have day jobs.
Yeah.
Like they play baseball, but
like big stars, like Stan Musial would be.
Mickey Mantle worked a job in the summer,
working as like a cop or something in the off season.
Which is crazy to think of the pricing that we see now compared to then. But it's
it's funny.
It's
strange. I like that idea. I think that
this was great.
Yeah, it's so rarely. That's an idea that's so rarely explored at all. I want to just go back a little bit. And what was Prez your idea? Or did DC go to you with that?
DC, it was DC's idea. They came to me with it. They thought at the time, 2015, we're going to be leading up to an election year. So we'll do a reboot of the comic of the first teenage president, and it will lead right up to the 2016 election.
Right.
But unfortunately, Prez did not last that long. It got canceled after 6 issues. So best laid plans. But it did allow me to then pick up the Flintstones, which is the title where I really sort of made my name. So it all worked out. Yeah,
you took the Flintstones and you did some really interesting things with it. It was a multi-award winner, as a matter of fact. All right, along with the Snagglepuss comic you did.
Yeah, well, Snagglepuss won the GLAAD Award.
Right.
Yeah, and they were both nominated for Eisners, although they didn't win any Eisners. But yeah, I felt like at the time that was going to be my role at DC. It was just doing all the hanna-barbera stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'll just do this hanna-barbera stuff forever. But they lost the rights, or they decided that this wasn't helping them sell Batman pajamas, so they put all the Hanna-Barbera stuff in the cupboard.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. I gotta say, I read all different kinds of comics. I'm all over the place, but I always like from the main companies when they do something offbeat. So Prez is the idea of Prez itself was great. And them doing that the way you did the take on the Flintstones was really interesting because it wasn't what you expected at all. And
that's what this is.
Right. That too. Yeah. The One Star Squadron. I'm trying to think where I'm going with this. I'm just sort of talking at this point, but, I know where I was going with this. Does this come from something like you? I know you worked on Second Coming, which was also kind of something that sort of, for most comic fans, would be something way out of left field, right?
Yeah.
That was supposed to be published at Vertigo, but then ended up at Ahoy, right? Because Vertigo folded.
Well, it wasn't because Vertigo folded. They just got the focus of all these letter writing campaigns, trying to get DC to drop it because it deals with Jesus Christ coming back to Earth. Yeah. Which I thought at the time well, it might sound controversial or offensive, but once people actually read it, see what it's like, they won't be upset.
Yeah.
But it was my mistake thinking people would actually wait to read a comic before forming an opinion on it.
Yeah.
So people were up in arms about it, 6 months before they'd even seen a page.
Right. That's unfortunate because it's a good comic. It really is. Anybody out there hasn't picked up? Oh, we lost your sound.
We can't hear you.
Now?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I accidentally kicked the mute button.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I think now I got you muted. Just
right.
There we go.
Good. Are we back? Good.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. So
go ahead.
We were talking about Second Coming.
Yeah. So at the time, I thought, well, this will people will read it. They'll see what I'm actually trying to do, and it won't be the worst imagination. But I think people just enjoyed the outrage so much more that and I was right. Once the comic came out and people saw what it was, there was no backlash. There was no anger.
Yeah.
Everyone who read it at least seemed to like it, and the people who hated it just seemed to move on to something else.
Right. Something else to be outraged.
Which is the way it should be. It's if Baskin Robbins has a flavor of ice cream that I absolutely hate, it's I'm not going to, I'll just order the chocolate. I'll get the salted caramel or something.
Right.
You mean
I don't understand why this is a hard concept.
You don't have to read a comic you don't like?
Well,
yeah.
Really?
Or watch a TV show. You don't have to.
And you don't have to complain about it.
Yeah.
The equivalent would be these people are you look, the Pepsi bottling plant makes Pepsi, and I just hate Pepsi. I don't like Pepsi. Therefore, would you consider shutting down the Pepsi bottling plant?
Yeah, just turn it all.
People's opinion matter nowadays.
Yeah.
What actually it's funny. It reminds me of one of our first projects that we did was a podcast mostly about horror films, and we did an episode on The Exorcist, which happened to be a favorite of mine. And you
I'd never seen it.
You'd never seen it, and the outrage around that movie was really interesting in the '70s because before people had seen it, they knew what it was about and they freaked out about it. But if you watch the movie, it's actually a really religious movie. You know, like
no, the priest that like believes in the faith and like is like sort of the winner, and the priest who's like, no, it's all sort of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, so
he ends up
dead.
Yeah, it's this wild misunderstanding of like, you know, of what's actually happening. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It really is because it closes people off, and A Second Coming really should have been among the Vertigo titles because it like above the piece.
Like you said, though, they shuttered for everyone. So it was probably doomed at Vertigo regardless.
Right.
It's funny that Hellblazer got away with so much that it did. And Second Coming gets that kind of attention, you know?
Yeah, I mean, after Preacher, I thought, well, geez.
Oh, Preacher. Oh, my God.
What are they going to possibly find offensive of this?
So let's talk about the reason why we're actually here is how we create these interviews are we usually make. I see a comic book and I read a comic book and then I see who's writing it or who's doing the art for it. And then I reach out, I look to see what else you've done, and you came up with a ton of things that I've been reading. And the thing that really caught us this time was the Batman Dark Age. So this is you and Mike all read, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mike is going to be on with us actually next Wednesday. We already have him scheduled. That's it. This will be the first time we're ever doing a comic book where we have the writer on, and then then
the artist.
On.
Oh, that's great.
We're gonna have a complete set.
So for this, how much of it is you, and how much of it is DC telling what to do? Because this really is a retelling of Batman origin, right? Dark Age is very different than anything we've seen from Batman in a long time.
So as you could probably guess, it's very little like directive from DC. In fact, most of what their directive is like, well, yes, tell the story that you want to tell. And so it does it retells the Batman canon, the Batman origin stories in a way that would make sense to me if it actually happened on Earth. If it actually happened on the world that we live in. Right. Which is ironic because the only way I can get away with doing that is by putting it on another universe, putting it in a universe that's going to die. Mm-hmm. And then you can tell a story about life as it really is on Earth.
Right, exactly,
And how many issues is it scheduled to be?
It's going to be 6 issues.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to.
And it's been really good, really.
Thank you.
Well done. And if you're listening, you're not reading this, go out and buy Batman Dark Age right now.
Yeah, it's really good.
Really good. And the fact that it's a retelling, it sees different ways we could have seen the.
Yeah, it's not a straight retelling. I think this is the last thing you want to do when you're retelling a story is to be really sort of cautious and reverential. It's like you want to basically just break it open and take the essential parts and make something new with it. Tell it through your lens, but find a way to make people care about the characters even more. Yeah, by breaking their stories open.
And I love stories like that. I love a retelling. It to me, I always loved Elseworlds. So when they did the Elseworlds stories, I loved those. This is to me like an Elseworlds story. It's a different story than we've ever seen before. A nice retelling of Batman and how things are developing.
Thank you.
It's such a more interesting way to approach these sort of folkloric characters at this point where, I don't know, at my age, I feel like I know everything about Batman I'm ever going to know. So the only thing that I find interesting is the sort of reinterpretations now, like you're doing with Dark Age. And there's another series running at the same time called First Night. It's been very good. But setting it more even further.
But I think that this is what we were talking about earlier about how you want to make every comic like this could be somebody's first comic and they're understanding what's going on. And that's kind of the way I wanted to write this. It's like if somebody has never read a Batman comic and they're coming in and they're reading this, they'll get like a sense of why Batman's important and why they should care about this character.
Yeah.
Just from and like also what has happened in his life that made him the way he is just from reading the series.
Mm-hmm. So is this a pitch from you or they're approaching you with this?
This is a pitch from me. Mike and I also worked together on Superman Space Age, which was kind of a
this is
similar
also good.
concept, but telling the life story of Superman. So this was like the natural sort of sequel to that, and we're hoping they'll let us do a third one that revolves around Wonder Woman.
Okay.
Ooh, you know, the whole Trinity.
Yep.
Nice.
It's been really good. Really,
Yeah, we're really enjoying it. And,
Thank you.
And what do I want to say?
Well, and you're at
losing my train
at
of
the
thought.
same time
You're killing
you're
me.
also working for Marvel, right? So you're working for
Yeah.
DC and Marvel,
Oh, that's unusual.
and they're
Yeah, I'll
Do
work
they-
for anyone
do
who
they know
pays
that,
me.
or are we giving that away?
Oh,
Oh no, they know. Yeah, no, there's no loyalty in the.
so this one you're all on your own. You're writing what you want. This one has to be heavily involved.
Yeah. No, a very different writing process because you're weaving in with like an event,
Right.
all these different stories. So there's a lot more. It's got to involve this. It's got to involve
Right.
that. It's gotta, the vampires are there. So yeah, a lot more editorial oversight in something like Night Hunters than in Batman Dark Age, where this is a dead universe anyway. So go
Right.
nuts.
You can do whatever you want here. With that, I actually have a question about that. So in your story, you have Hawkeye, right? Is your story. Whose idea was it to make him have the mustache that makes him look like Green Arrow?
That was me.
Are you intentionally trying to make him look like Green Arrow?
Yeah, well, I do sort of a running joke about how all these bow and arrow guys are kind of like all derivations of Robin Hood.
Right.
Yeah.
So I do that sometimes, like where I like
Well, you even
try
refer to him in there as Robin Hood, right? Yeah.
like refer to them as Robin Hood or like draw them like Errol Flynn or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of like about how these are all kind of copied from each other is sort of the joke.
So it's funny because
A repeating archetype.
we scheduled this interview, and I'm reading Blood Hunt in order. So I buy every one of the crossovers. I have a strange addiction, so I buy every crossover. So I actually read this last night, and I was like, oh, I'm so glad that we're talking to Mark Russell tomorrow about this because it's a Green Arrow lookalike, and
I noticed on the cover, I haven't gotten up to this yet, but I noticed on the cover you have Man-Wolf.
he's not his story.
Not my story, but
Okay.
But you're right. It's the cover.
There's
I
three
do
stories.
apologize.
Three stories. There's
Because I
a
haven't read this yet.
Dagger story, man.
But I am not qualified to talk about the Man Wolf
Mark
story.
Mark
okay.
the Hawkeye story. How
All
many?
right.
How many of these are you doing?
That's the only one.
It was a one shot, right?
Yeah.
And what else are you doing for Marvel right now?
I'm doing the X Factor series that was just announced recently. So they're rebooting the X-Men universe under Tom Brevoort's tutelage. And so, yeah, I'll be doing X Factor.
Well, this was fantastic too.
Oh, thank you.
Not to use
That was my first series. That was my first series for Marvel, and X Factor will be my second.
Nice.
again, very, very, just the way you told the story, how the different time frames are really, really enjoyable. I'm a huge Fantastic Four fan, as you can probably tell.
Great.
And that story was really well done.
I'm really looking
Thank
forward to some new X.
Yeah, I love the Fantastic Four. They're probably my favorite Marvel sort of
Me too.
group.
I've going down a rabbit hole recently. I'm buying as many back issues as I can. So anytime we go to a convention, I buy the lowest issue at the best price. So it's actually going to lead to my impending divorce, but it's probably well worth it.
Well, at least it wasn't a Cybertruck.
There you go.
Right.
But this is a really good story, how you take it through the different decades and how they are impacting those decades, how they change with the, it's funny because in comic books, the heroes never change, right? So we're the same guys from the 60s, the 70s throughout, and now, so we modernize them every decade.
Yeah.
And this was like a retelling of all the modernization each time.
I'm looking forward to a reboot of X Factor, by the way. They're one of my Marvel favorites, actually.
Oh yeah. No, I'm excited for it. I'm already about 4 issues in the writing. So, and we got art by Bob Quinn, who I've worked with before on a lot of things. I think he's really great.
Mm-hmm.
So the pages he turns in are looking fantastic. So issue 1's going to drop in August.
Yeah, I was a teenager. I still have fond memories of reading the Louis Simonson stories from the X Factor. Yeah.
So how do you have time to be on here with us right now? It seems like you're writing.
That's a good question.
Basically,
we're usually working on 3 or 4 series at the same time. So it's a testament to how much I like talking to you guys to come on to a podcast.
So what do you right now? Is the Batman series over? You finished writing it?
I'm involved in rewrites right now for the
Okay.
6th issue, so almost done. Almost done.
So what's next for DC?
I don't have anything on the schedule for DC right now, other than the potential for that Wonder Woman
Okay.
third book, which is why, because I want to leave lots of room for that. That's what I would want to put all my eggs in the basket for.
Yeah, I'd be looking forward to that too. Actually, it'd be great if Mike Allred works with you on it too.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
That'd be the whole team coming back together.
Yeah,
And the X Factor is going to be a monthly?
Yes.
excellent.
So I got that going on, and then other creator-owned stuff like Second Coming is still. I'm working on a new season of Second Coming.
Oh, great. Mm-hmm.
And anything else outside of...
And will that be with Ahoy again?
Yes, and in
Okay,
fact, we're also doing My Bad, which is the series I'm co-writing with Bryce Ingman, and that the third series of that first issue just came out, so that's out right now. So yeah, I'm doing a lot of creator-owned stuff, doing stuff with Ahoy, doing stuff with AWA. I've got a title which has. Oh, go ahead.
Everyone's become a lot more flexible with writers being able to work for the different companies at the same time.
Yeah, it's really kind of nice in a way. I mean, it's nice as a kid to be a sort of underpaid freelancer. That there are so many companies, different flavors of publishers to choose from right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm writing a series, sci-fi anthology series for Mad Cave, which hasn't been announced, but yeah, there's just a lot of different things you can be doing right now.
Yeah, Mad Cave has a lot of good stuff. I don't know if you're following any of their stuff.
You bought something recently.
Trying to remember. I bought a lot.
You bought a lot of stuff from there.
Yeah,
They've got a lot of good titles by really respected creators coming out. So
there's so many
good hands.
So many small companies now producing some really good stuff.
They might have done You've Been Canceled.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
So you're really keeping busy. Is
Yeah, no, I got to out of sheer economic self-interest. I've got to keep the treadmill going.
You're the guy who has to pay the bills, the superhero,
right?
The bills,
absolutely.
So, what if there was anyone you could work on? If there was any character that you would want to work on now, who would you want to work on?
Well, I think we've already mentioned Green Arrow. He's definitely on my short list. I would love to write a Green Arrow series. Also, I would love to do a Howard the Duck maybe for Marvel.
Yeah, well, that would make sense with your work on Perez originally too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and I think that I was also just really interested in being able to write my own creator-owned stuff too. I think all things being equal, if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would probably primarily work on my own creator-owned stories.
Sure. And anything in non-comics that you're thinking of doing?
Yeah, I am trying to get some of my comics adapted to film or TV shows, and I would love to work in one of those mediums as well. I've written actually a prose book, which will come out in 2025, about the Brothers Grimm fairy tales.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And it's going to be called Grimm and Grimmer. But it should be out like for the Christmas season in 2025.
Is it a novel?
It's not a novel. What it does this kind of the same thing for the Brothers Grimm fairy tales I did for the Bible, and where it takes like 12 Brothers Grimm fairy tales, some of which you've heard of before, like Cinderella or Rumpelstiltskin, Rapunzel, the hits, and some of which you've never heard of before. They're just very obscure, but the obscure ones were probably my favorite ones to do because they're just wild stories.
Yeah, they get weird.
Yeah, weird. They get very weird.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to intentionally mix them together just to give people a broader perspective of what it means to be a Brothers Grimm fairy tale, and also just to know that there's like these stories were never meant just for children. They were meant to be sort of folk tales.
Yeah.
Wildly just sort of entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's did they do Iron John? I can't remember if Iron John was
I think Iron John is a Brothers Grimm.
That is a weird one. That is really weird. Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of great stuff in folklore that could be mined for these sort of ideas, because if you think about it, it's all kind of the same thing, like comics are the tall tales and horror stories have
they're stories that are a form of therapy that you get the patient talking long enough, they'll tell you what's important to them.
Yeah.
And that's what these stories are. They go back over themes and commonalities that tell you what were important to people then, or what they were really worried about. Usually it was like the unknown or being abandoned, or or having, achieving success and having it taken from them,
Yeah.
which is very relevant to people today. I think
Right.
that the fears and the insecurities haven't changed that much. The manifestations of them, like instead of a witch, maybe it's a boss or something.
Right.
Those have changed, but the insecurities themselves have not.
Well, sure. I mean, the Fantastic Four is a space age sort of analog of facing an unknown future. Like what was space going to do to us? What was, would we become superhumans, or would we,
Yeah, it's this really great sort of Cold War story, I think, about the sort of the melange of like hope for the future. Now that we could travel space, we have all this technology, and our technology seems to get better year after year. And also the fear of what that means, because it's like we also now live under the threat of instant nuclear annihilation.
Right. Yes.
Or what are we going to find out there in space?
Yeah.
Or AI.
Yeah. But I feel like that's the 60s. The 60s were this like this decade of great hope and faith in the future, and also this great the decade of great paranoia.
Yeah.
And they both kind of sprang from the same sort of Pandora's box.
Yeah. And if you follow the line of sci-fi in that direction, when you hit the 70s, it's like shipwreck. Like the Titanic hits the iceberg, and everyone's like, nope, nothing's going to work. It's all Esther from here on out.
Yeah, it's apocalyptic.
Yeah, everything becomes
right. It was the decade of like Silent Spring, and it's like Vietnam and stuff. It's like it was cynicism. It was about
exactly.
Civilization has crapped the bed.
Right. Mad Max, no blade of grass, all that stuff.
Yeah.
We're all going to die.
And I think these stories, we go back to them for that very reason. Is like we want optimism. We want that. We got to find it somewhere.
Right.
I think why Star Trek's still out there.
Yeah, Star Trek is really resonant because it's one of the few science fiction stories that like didn't just critique the present, but showed like a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's like survived so long, because there's so few people do that capably. And yet Star Trek shows us a future which not only is bright and hopeful, but very plausible. I mean, really, it's just that could be the future for us if we were to want it.
You get our act together.
Definitely. Now, going back to comics again, if you had any artists you could work with and you haven't been able to work with them yet, who would you want to work with?
Well, I have a bunch of artists, but yeah, I think my short list would include Christian Ward, Marguerite Sauvage, Trad Moore. I think working with those artists would be like a special. I would just try to give them my A work. Not that I ever try to give anyone my B work, but
you would give.
Yeah, I would really want to work on something special with one of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that actually made me think of something. This is kind of a writerly question, but when you're going to work with a certain artist, do you change the descriptions in the panel descriptions in order to suit their style? Like, for instance, if it's someone who does a lot of shadows or a lot of dark scenes or things like that, do you change the script in a way to sort of cater to their style, or is it like? Yeah,
I do a lot. An example would be Mike Allred. Like I write a script differently for Mike Allred than I do for anyone else, because I realize I don't want him crowding. I don't want to crowd him with like panels. I want to give him space to throw visuals out there to make him grand and operatic, and so I try to have fewer panels per page in his stories. And also, I write the scripts for him knowing that he's probably going to ignore the page breakdowns as I've and just sort of like say this panel is a splash page, and I'm throwing all the panels onto the next page.
Yeah.
So you're right with that in mind. The idea that like if I only put 3 or 4 panels per page, then he has complete freedom to like just appoint his own splash pages and throw all the other panels on the next page. And then there's some artists who they're really good at like facial expressions or subtlety. So I try to like lean into that in the notes. Like this person looks like their dog was just stolen, or something like that.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's really cool.
Interesting how you have to adjust like that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're writing for somebody like Mike Allred, whose style is so distinct.
Yes,
you're gonna.
Yeah, you don't want to. The key thing is when you get an artist whose style you want, that they're there because you want the Mike Allred treatment. You don't want them to try to like
Right.
be like every other artist.
Yeah.
It really is in your best interest to change your writing style to get the most out of that art style.
I'd be interested to see, like, if you were working with Mike Allred and you're like, oh, this page is 9 panels of a single teacup and it's all narration, you know?
Yeah. I don't think he would be very happy about that. I don't think he would see that as a page worthy. What he would probably do is he would break down all 9 panels, say it's a splash page, just a giant teacup.
Yeah.
There's going to be all these cosmic swirls. There'd be like
Right,
a universe
exactly,
inside the tea, which would be frankly a way better.
Right.
So you trust your artist, is what you're saying.
Yeah. But with Mike, especially now, I kind of like am beginning to understand. Oh no, this is how he's not going to like this. He's going to change it to that.
Yeah.
So that I just try to write something that will allow him to do that to begin with.
So how are you exchanging ideas with Mike now as you write the Batman Dark Age series?
Well, he'll usually get the scripts like months before he even starts working on them. So he'll email me back saying, I'm thinking that instead of doing it this way, what if they're all on like zip lines or if like they were it was like, okay, well that works, or
That's a very madman idea. Like,
yeah,
put it on zip lines.
yeah, every problem can be solved with zip lines.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the rest of that Dark Age.
Yeah, really,
definitely.
a lot. Yeah,
And now you piqued our interest with Wonder Woman too. So
yeah,
and then
I hope it happens.
Narrow.
yeah.
Now it would be the 4th thing. That would be a perfect. You could build a whole universe around that.
I would keep doing these books forever.
Yeah.
They said we want Flash the Fast Age.
Yeah, that would be,
I would do it.
that would be perfect.
Yeah, you're talking to the world's biggest Flash fan, by the way, when you said that.
I won't I won't show you the other side of the room. It's covered from head to toe with Flash stuff. So
Oh my God.
I have an obsession. Let's just say. Where are you appearing next? What's your upcoming?
I'm going to be at Rose City Comic Con in Portland in September, and I'll be at San Diego Comic Con in July.
Okay.
And then I'm going to be at the American Library Association, their convention in San Diego at the end of June and the beginning of July. So those are my big appearances.
No New York this year?
I'm on the fence. I might do New York, but I'm not sure yet.
Well, it's a long trip for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there's just been a lot of travel this year already.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we were talking to Howard
Chaykin,
and he likes to travel to Europe, so he goes to all the conventions in Europe.
I would take that gig. I'm doing a teaching residency in Dublin, Ireland in a couple of weeks, so I'll be doing that. But yeah, I love traveling internationally to go to conventions. I need to get on that circuit.
That's got to be a really different. Like, what was he saying? He was in Brazil, and then he was heading over to France.
Yeah,
he was saying
he seemed to be going where the food was best.
Yes, that's
that seems to be the pattern. I did CCXP in Sao Paulo, Brazil last year, and it was amazing. It was the best convention ever.
The fans are crazy down there, right? Like,
yeah, and it's huge, and it's really well put together. It looks nicer, frankly, than San Diego or New York.
What's his name?
Someone else we interviewed was there. I can't remember. One of our recent interviews was also down there, and he was saying the same thing. How much the fans are just like,
I've never had that kind of reception before.
They have a long tradition in South America of taking comics a lot more seriously than America has, much like Japan.
Right.
Like, I just read about the guy who made, what is it, Eternaut? I can't remember the guy's name, but he was murdered by the Pinochet regime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because of something in a comic.
Yeah.
Like, it was like that intense.
I'm almost jealous of that. I'm almost jealous of that guy. It's like, he got murdered, but he was. Someone was like reading his work seriously.
Yeah. Eternaut's really hard to find too. I got to look it up. Maybe we'll do a video on it. It's really cool.
Why would I want to go to Brazil and they're murdering people?
That's Chile.
We're not important enough to be assassinated.
Micro celebrities.
It's okay to talk about the Pinochet regime in Brazil. Just be careful in Chile.
It's not. It's Peron. I'm thinking now. Not
Argentina.
Peron, Argentina. Yes, that was it. Yeah, I got them mixed up. So many bad people. That have had power there.
Is there anything else you would like to promote? Like where can
Yes.
people find you?
I'm on most social medias. My handle is at Manrus, MANRUSS. And I think I mentioned the Kickstarter for the Traveling to Mars, the hardcover edition. Please go check that out on Kickstarter. And then also Death Ratio, my one-off with AWA. It just comes out in stores today. It's one single issue, so you don't have to worry about buying a whole series. And it's about a future where social media replaces human governments.
Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
That's
And
what
if
we're
you
trying to
piss
do.
off too many people, your neck brace will explode, and
Really?
your head blows off your neck.
Oh God, I feel like we're
You
so.
get too many downvotes. Yeah.
I'd be dead already.
You'd be gone. Forget it. Yeah,
I
both of
would've
us would
died
be. That
a
would
month
be it.
ago.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank
joining
you.
us and giving us your time
This
and
is a lot
talking
of
about
fun.
all this stuff. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, guys. Thank you.
Yeah. If you're ever in our area, let us know. We'd love to.
Well, hopefully I'll be there in October, but
we'll be there
Yeah.
one of the days for
Mhm.
sure. My kids want to actually go to 2 days this year, so I don't know. If I
yeah.
can live too, but we'll definitely be somewhere. We go to conventions probably twice a month.
We still
try
haven't gotten on a plane yet.
Yeah, we try to hit around the
we're thinking
area
about
twice
it.
a month, but
That's great.
I'm thinking about Heroes Con.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thanks for joining us. We'll, if you ever want to promote anything else, just let us know. You're welcome to come on anytime you want.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for your time.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.